As Abby mentioned, we welcome your questions and your feedback, particularly on the polls. And I'm going to give you a heads up now that we have a poll coming up. So get your phones ready. They'll show the QR code again here shortly. And we really want to engage with you in these discussions. So let's start with a broader look at decarbonization in the Asia-Pacific region. Basically, how are the countries in this region pacing against their emissions reductions goals? What does it look like? What does it look like out there? David, do you want to start?
Yeah, I can take this one. I'll preface this by, let's start with some bad news, and then I promise to offer a little bit more positive commentary. In terms of the bad news, well, we can see from, if we call up a chart looking at the region's emissions, we can see that Asia is where we're continuing to see emissions growth. It makes sense, of course, this is a dynamic region with so many still developing economies, so it is what we'd expect. However, if we look at sort of research that our colleagues at part of our research offering, Bloomberg New Energy Finance, hopefully many of you are aware of their work, they've recently examined the degree to which countries' net zero pledges are consistent, their pledges are consistent with achieving a net zero goal. And they found that about 48% of global emissions covered by pledges aren't consistent with meeting the aims of the Paris Agreement.
Are not consistent.
They're not consistent.
Okay.
So, and that's simply the pledges that have been made. If we look at progress, if we look at what that means in practice, just look at what we've seen from some major companies just in the past couple of weeks, whether it's big tech companies withdrawing or adjusting their own climate targets. Yesterday in the aviation sector, we had a really interesting example. Air New Zealand withdrew a 2030 climate target because they simply don't have access to the tools they need. In that sector, that's sustainable aviation fuel, it's more efficient aircraft. That, their view is they simply don't have the means to make the progress they need to hit targets. So that's the bad news. I promise some good news. We know that China accounts for about a third of global emissions. What happens in China is critical for the global picture. And that picture started to become really interesting. Looking at the figures we've seen for the first half across their power sector, such a large contributor to their emissions, we see coal consumption, oil consumption down. There is a real chance that emissions, they certainly declined in 2023. They could have peaked last year, ahead of the 2030 target that President Xi Jinping set. There's a lot, there's a lot of ifs and buts in that conclusion. It does depend on what we see in terms of economic growth, in terms of moving the economy to less polluting sectors, but potentially a really huge piece of positive momentum in this region.
Well, following up on that, and from that economic opportunity standpoint, how are APAC governments responding to incentives, also some of the shifting policies that are coming out, particularly from Europe and the United States? How is that happening here?
Yeah, so
Ishika?
China is, you can expect China to come out with some retaliatory tariffs as it faces increasing barriers in the US and Europe, and especially looking forward to November and the presidential election in the US. A lot of it depends on whether we get a Trump 2.0 situation and what that would mean, since he said that he is ready to erect barriers of a tariff of as much as 200% on Chinese EV imports, especially since they're being made in Mexico now, and he's like, make it in America or don't come here at all, essentially. So let's look ahead to what that brings. The other thing to look at also is, China is diverting a lot of its exports via products made in Southeast Asia, for example, or other parts of the world. So when it comes to solar panels or EV parts, what kind of further tariffs we see from the US and Europe in terms of curbing that will be crucial as well. It's interesting because China's vice finance minister rather came out to say that they've essentially exported disinflation when it comes to the whole green supply chain globally, right? They've made all these technologies viable for countries everywhere because there's an oversupply, there's overcapacity, and prices have gone down, like plunged. So yeah, those dynamics will be interesting to watch. And how Korean battery makers come in and step in. They're already setting up a lot of facilities in the US. How you see other countries come in and really take advantage of the pushback against China in the West will be one to watch.
Right. So let's turn to some of the inevitable backlash to some of this that we're seeing, particularly in the United States, some in Europe. It's ESG, as I think everyone in this room is aware, particularly in the West and in the United States, has turned into a very political hot-button issue. And just a heads up, I'm going to come to you all with a poll shortly, so be ready. My question for all of you, and maybe we start with you, Sheryl, is whether that sentiment is going to spread to Asia.
Right. Yeah, that's really one of the top concerns people have when they think about ESG. So from what we're seeing in this region, it doesn't seem like what's happening in the US is going to happen here to such a level, right, of having Republicans pushing for an anti-ESG agenda and so on. So I think where we're seeing pushback when it comes to ESG or climate-related regulation is really when you look at what's happening in the West, and Asia is trying to understand whether all these requirements and standards being imposed are applicable here and cater to the region's sensitivities. So I think one really good example that we've seen is the European Union's carbon border adjustment mechanism. So what that is, we just had a breakfast panel on it, right? It's basically a tax that the EU wants to impose if you are producing carbon-intensive products and you are exporting it into the European Union. So there are a few countries that have already come up pretty strongly against it. India comes to mind, saying that it's unfair. And I think like one other good example is, again, the EU with its deforestation law. So what that is basically a ban on products and raw materials that are made from commodities, can be anything from like coffee to palm oil, right, that result from newly deforested land. So of course here we have Malaysia and Indonesia, major palm producers, and they are saying that it's unfair. So I think to the extent of pushback, we're not really seeing pushback on ESG as a concept, but it's really more in this region how we are looking at ESG and climate rules in other parts of the world and whether it makes sense here and how we're going to align with them.
Do you have anything to add, David?
Oh, no. I mean, I just feel like it's a highly politicized issue in the US.
Very.
And I mean, the pushback, the drive for it was not as strong in Asia as it was in the US. So the pushback is sort of proportional in that sense. Right. In Asia, I think a lot of the governments were very much circumspect, given that so many fortunes are tied to fossil fuels, so much of, when you're talking about energy security, right? Coal is the answer for a lot of major countries here.
Right.
So yeah, that drive wasn't as bad, so the pushback hasn't been as bad either.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think one thing that's been interesting to me, looking at the debate that's been happening in the US, is a lot of the pushback has not only been against ESG, and it's definitely true that even the acronym has become a sort of a dirty acronym. You know, we're seeing that replaced, but predominantly this has been a sort of political issue that's pushed back against DEI.
Right.
And that for me, and I'd love to hear opinions if others have a contrary view, but that seems to be quite a uniquely US phenomenon. And obviously, we've seen large companies facing intense pressure, not only from politicians, but from consumers and from particular interest groups with a particular viewpoint. And they've taken action. You know, we've seen big companies drop specific goals around particularly the S of ESG. Right. That's not something that I've observed happening in Asia at this point, but you know, we potentially haven't. That hasn't been potentially as much of an issue. So I think there's a degree more pragmatism in this region.
That's a good segue to the first poll, the first promise poll, which is even if that pushback isn't happening here in the way that it is in the United States, obviously a lot of companies, many represented here, are multinational and are sort of rethinking how they characterize these goals. So we wanted to ask, what is your organization's preferred term in place of ESG? Sustainability, responsible business, energy transition, green economy, or you're still using ESG. So if you would, if you haven't already, take your phones out for this, scanning this code, and then we'll see your results live as they happen. Because you're right, David, a lot of companies are just rebranding it and attempting to avoid some of the political backlash.
I think it plays into the idea of green hushing as well, which maybe something we come on to. There's not only a rebranding, but a reluctance to be as vocal about successes and achievements in these fields.
I know, which is so interesting because, again, I mean, it is a delicate balance, but there are real opportunities, business opportunities, right, that are longer term potentially than shorter. So how do you see governments in this region, and I know it's a big region with lots of different diverse approaches, but Sheryl, how do you see governments trying to balance, and companies here trying to balance what is clear long-term potential gain with trying to make sure that they remain resilient economically, that their energy sources are secure?
Right, absolutely. Yeah, I think that brings us to a pretty important topic that a lot of us here in the region have been talking about, which is the opportunity of transition finance, right? So in this region, we do have quite a lot of coal assets, but also as we look towards turning them into clean energy assets, there is a gap that is needed in terms of funding, in terms of finance and company action before we get there. So it's really interesting to look at transition finance because a while back it would have been seen by businesses. So for instance, banks, right? They were for a period of time having all these restrictions on fossil fuel financing, and that's still ongoing. But I think they are also seeing more and more opportunity when it comes to transition finance to split it out. So you have green, you have transition, and what we're seeing a good example of is when it comes to the phase out of coal power plants in this region. So banks are actually explicitly changing their policies to allow them to finance coal projects, but not new coal projects, but the early retirement of coal power plants. So there are a lot of young coal power plants in this region, and to retire them early, there will be lost profit. So we have companies, we have governments, we have the financial sector all working together to structure deals that can result in the early phase out of power plants. And that is transition finance, and those deals for the companies, the governments, and the banks, they are all business opportunities.
Ishika, a couple of days ago, you and I were talking about some of the more, I don't know if they're exotic, but some of the more exotic products coming online that are a part of, I think, of what Sheryl's talking about. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I think the most exotic part of transition finance is transition credits that Singapore is trying to work on. The idea is that, they ensure that there's financing, that the gap in financing for the early retirement of coal plants is sort of made up, and investors are interested in being able to finance that. And it's going to be another form of essentially carbon credits. There's no marketplace for transition credits, of course. It's still in the piloting stage. But they're hoping that this can really take off and be the product for phasing out a lot of coal plants in Asia, where the fleet is really the youngest compared to Europe and Asia. Europe and the US. The other type of financing is really transition bonds. I was speaking to a few banks, and they were saying that you've seen the era of GSSS, right? But transition bonds is where they're going to see growth coming in, It's just 0.4% of the market right now, the sustainable bond market right now. Of course, Japan and China have led it. Japan just this year has issued more than $10 billion in the world's first sovereign transition bond. So let's see how this transition bond market really takes off. You are seeing more and more funds in Asia sort of come out and say, you can't just exclude big polluters, Temasek being one of them, some pension funds in Australia as well. So if you're getting investors becoming more interested in engaging with the region and you're seeing disclosure requirements coming up across the region for companies to be able to disclose their targets, disclose their progress, then that ecosystem should be developing more. And you could see transition bonds really becoming a growth driver for a lot of the banks and financiers in the region.
I don't know if we can go back to the previous poll results, but yes, you can see it. Sustainability is by far and away the preferred term in place of ESG. Fortunately, you're at the Sustainable Business Summit, so so it looks like we're right there with the trend. Let's go to our next poll, which I think addresses exactly what Ishika was just mentioning about, which is, should banks and investors fund high-emitting companies? So A, yes, they can't decarbonize without the support of these companies. No, this is just going to enable more bad behavior. So let's see what all of you think about that. David, do you have anything more to add on sort of this idea of where do you finance? What's the best use of transition financing?
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of my recent background has been looking across the energy space, and it's been really interesting to see this debate evolve there. Initially from investors who their engagement with big emitters was essentially around divestment. There was a huge push to persuade some of the biggest fossil fuel producers to divest their assets, to get out of coal, get out of oil and gas, and we saw some examples of that happen. I think there was a quite clear and quick recognition that putting those assets in the hands of less experienced, more opaque operators wouldn't deliver the climate outcomes those investors wanted to see. And I think we've seen the evolution of that debate around the sort of responsible custodian idea. And I think we're seeing the sort of further evolution of that from the investment point of view. The only way to deliver real-world outcomes is to engage with and finance the decarbonisation.
Right.
Quite exactly. And,
right.
and I think we see that in that recognition.
Yeah, exactly. You can see, I think our audience, I think you all agree with this, that
that's a relief.
they have to be a part of the solution here. I think we might have an audience question, Abby.
Our first one, as the economy slows down in some parts of the world and costs of compliance to ESG escalate, do you see a slowdown in the ESG movement and or compliance deadlines?
Who wants to take that?
I mean, I can offer a perspective. I think, as I said previously, I think absolutely from a company level, we're seeing some of those high-emitting, difficult-to-abate sectors begin to talk to their stakeholders, to talk to consumers about the problems and the challenges they face. And we're seeing more of that now. I'm sure that is because, we're in a much different environment, whether it's just in terms of interest rates, for example, than a couple of years ago. They have less capacity to potentially put investment into complex solutions. They're finding that across their supply chains, that's the case. So, yeah, quite. I think it's an issue that is definitely coming to the fore, and we're seeing some of that progress become challenged.
So what happens if we see more companies say they can't meet their targets by 2030, and more countries therefore can't meet their targets? Like, what's the end result of that, other than we're not meeting the targets that have been laid out? But what does that mean for the framework that's everyone's agreed to?
I'll answer briefly and then love to hear from my colleagues. I mean, I had a conversation just last night in one of the sessions we had to open this event last night. And one of the speakers was saying to me, well, does that matter? If goals are missed, is that the be-all and end-all, or is it the progress you've made towards them? Are we looking in absolutes, or is it about making sure that steps are being made along the way? So that's certainly sort of one view. Anything to add from?
Yeah, I think you do see as people get a little bit more desperate towards those deadlines, you see them relying on a bunch of other solutions, and some of these are quite market-based. So carbon offsets is one that comes to mind, right? We've seen the carbon market grow by so much because corporates and governments are realizing it's really difficult to hit the goals that they had set. So I think more and more you'll see the growth of such markets. Of course, the carbon markets have been in a little bit of a slump, right? Since there were some integrity issues around the quality of offsets, a few pretty prominent projects have imploded. But you can also see in recent months there's been more recognition of how such solutions might go mainstream. So, for instance, in recent months, the US published a framework, right, saying that carbon offsets can be used in Scope 3 emissions, which are companies' emissions related to its suppliers and customers. And these Scope 3 emissions make up the bulk of a company's emissions for most companies. So you do see more and more of these solutions tied to technology that are coming up, right? You have carbon credits in forestry projects, but you also have more and more interesting things like carbon removal, and these can be very costly.
Just one thing to add, at a national level for governments in terms of targets and ambition, we're in a really critical period. 2025 will be the deadline for countries to submit more ambitious targets to the UN under their nationally determined contributions. So, it's not a sort of esoteric debate. Like, we're in a period where countries are thinking very hard about what can they achieve by when. So it'd be interesting to see, some of those new targets as they're delivered.
As a non-expert, I sort of reduced the question you were speaking about with someone last night about, does it matter if we hit the hard deadlines, or is it the progress that counts? But at the end of the day, the deadlines are about reducing the impact of climate change, which seems to be continuing to accelerate. So isn't it important that we meet these targets?
I mean, I just wanted to add to your previous question and kind of addressing the one you just asked. Basically, we shouldn't forget the aim of all these targets, right, which is to stall sort of the increase in global temperatures. What's going to happen is if companies don't meet these targets, governments don't meet these targets, you're going to see an increase in extreme weather events. We're already seeing it across the globe. What that will mean for investors really is conducting more climate risk analysis. How are all these extreme weather events, hurting your assets, like right down to the asset level, right? Where is the factory located? Is it on a fault line? Is it at the coast? Is it in a flood-prone area? And I think investors need to really prepare to be ready for these extreme weather events to just multiply over the years, especially as companies drop their targets, especially big ones like the fossil fuel industry. And you are seeing sovereign wealth funds, more sovereign wealth funds. There was an Invesco survey recently looking at physical risk analysis in their portfolios, and I think this is just going to become more prevalent over the years.
Right. I think we might have another audience question, Abby.
Questions. Going back to a little bit about, the varying sizes and supply chains and people who are working in this space, our question asker says that a lot of work is happening at the large corporate level for enabling sustainability, but what about SMEs, essentially? They neither have the resource nor the real need to move the sustainability journey. Given that SMEs are a large part of the economy that can't be left out of this transition, what can change this?
We're looking at you, Sheryl. No. No, who wants to take this?
I can share some insight that we heard in a session last night. We heard from Singapore Post, and they're in a process of conducting an inventory of their Scope 3 emissions. And one of the challenges that they described was the ability to obtain and to verify data. which is problematic, particularly for smaller, medium-sized companies. The approach they talked about was helping those in the supply chain and not shunning them, but offering support, helping those companies to build capacity, particularly in that data area. I think that probably applies more generally as well. I think probably everyone in this room who's working at corporates has probably got examples of ways in which they're helping those entities in their supply chains to tackle some of these issues.
And the reporting burden is also quite large on SMEs who don't have the resources that large companies do. So you do have examples of, regulators and the exchange in Singapore, for example, like setting up awareness, like educational sessions, or, engaging the SMEs more in terms of how they can find out the information on Scope 3 and otherwise and report it. But I do think that is a big pain point still for SMEs, and I don't really know what the answer is yet.
Right. Abby, is there one more?
Yeah, we have a couple more. Which region needs to step up the most in their emissions reductions targets? Putting you on the spot there with that one.
Okay, which one of you is going to take that one?
David, you go.
I mean, I guess the answer depends sort of where is the Sustainable Business Summit being held. But I mean, we did show in that first chart that we showed you, the reality is, the largest share of emissions happens in Asia. The emissions growth is happening in Asia. And as many have said, there is no path to net zero. There is no solution to climate change without Asia. So this, for me, this is the critical region for this problem. It's why I consider my job to be fascinating and consider myself to be in exactly the right region. It is a challenge, but as we'll hear, hopefully throughout the day, it's also an enormous opportunity, and the bulk of that opportunity ought to be right here in Asia.
Right. Yeah, I think very much linked to that is the idea of responsibility, right? Asia's emissions are high, but also there is a growing sense of countries in the West, in more developed regions, needing to help Asia to reduce our emissions. I mean, it can be in many various forms. It can be through grants, government programs, or even a fund, right, that is set up across countries, and all these developed countries are contributing. But I think it's twofold. So Asia does need to reduce our emissions, but also other regions who have been responsible for a lot of these climate change and planet warming emissions need to fund the projects that are happening in Asia to reduce our emissions.
And let's not forget, that other countries are sort of exporting their emissions to Asia, right? There's a reason Asia is responsible for such a large part of emissions today, because they're the manufacturing hub for the rest of the world.
Right.
So I think this sense of responsibility really needs to come from the top for large corporates that are based everywhere in being able to help Asia reduce its emissions.
Well, that's a good way to transition to our final question for the group here, which is the United States and the election coming up in November. Could not be a more stark contrast in the approach between what the Biden administration has done and therefore what we can expect the Vice President, Kamala Harris, to do if she becomes president versus what Donald Trump tried to did in his previous term, and most likely will ratchet up efforts in a new administration. So how will that affect this debate and what happens here in Asia?
Quite. If I could take, obviously, I think the expectation would be that a new Trump presidency, we would be likely to see a repeat of what happened last time, a withdrawal from the Paris Agreement. It's interesting to me that the election takes place just a week before the next COP in Baku, and those who remember what happened the last time around the election, it really overshadowed that process and really sort of was an impediment to progress on climate negotiations. So, we're likely to see probably a withdrawal from Paris. When it comes to some of the work the Biden administration's done, particularly the Inflation Reduction Act, I think it's a slightly more nuanced picture. the analysis that Bloomberg and some of our colleagues has done shows that the biggest beneficiaries from that program have been red states.
Right.
And so you'd expect to see a reluctance for Trump to withdraw something that's benefiting his base. You know, when it comes to Harris, we know that in her 2019 campaign, she was a big supporter of a carbon tax. She, you know, put forward programs for $10 trillion of spending on climate aid. She's been involved in a debate that we've seen recently on fracking. She says she's no longer in favor of a ban, but I think we can anticipate a sort of more favorable you know, disposition than a Trump administration.
Certainly. All right. Well, thank you all for that. A great way to kick off this summit. If you would like more insights from this amazing team and the larger team that we have all around the world, you can subscribe to Bloomberg.com, and I believe we have an offer that allows you, I think, a 3-month subscription. And we have details that are going to show up here. So if you would like, to get more information from this team, which admittedly I'm biased, but is the best in the world, come to Bloomberg.com. Thank you all.